Taiwan charges 9% in huge China AI server smuggling case. 74% restricted AI servers reached China before Taiwan stopped another 56. Taiwanese prosecutors have charged 9 people in an extraordinary case involving high-end artificial intelligence servers allegedly diverted towards China, including a manager at Nvidia and people linked to server manufacturer Supermicro. The case centers on 130 advanced B300-based servers that prosecutors say were obtained using false information claiming they would remain in Taiwan. 74% ultimately reached Chinese customers, according to prosecutors. Another 56% were prevented from leaving Taiwan after customs officials detected irregularities, turning what might otherwise have remained an invisible supply chain breach into a major test of the controls, designed to keep some of the world's most powerful AI hardware away from China. The alleged route around the controls. The case began with the purchase of 130 B300 servers, manufactured by Supermicro and equipped with advanced Nvidia technology. Prosecutors allege that documentation was used to create the impression that the machines would be installed and operated at a rented data center facility in Taiwan, rather than exported onwards to restricted destinations. That distinction mattered because advanced AI processors have become one of the most aggressively controlled technologies in the strategic confrontation between Washington and Beijing. The United States has progressively restricted China's access to some advanced Nvidia hardware since 2022, seeking to limit the computing capacity available for increasingly powerful AI systems and other sensitive applications. The alleged plan was not simply a single shipment placed on a boat for China. Prosecutors say 50% of the servers went through Indonesia, 16% were sent directly to mainland China, and 8 traveled through Japan and Hong Kong before eventually reaching Chinese customers. Those routes are important because they show the central challenge facing technology export controls. A restriction may exist on paper between an American technology company and China, but the physical product can pass through distributors, customers, warehouses, freight companies, and third countries before reaching its ultimate destination. The Nvidia manager at the center of the case. Among those charged is an Nvidia manager identified publicly only by the surname Cheng. Prosecutors have described Cheng as a key figure responsible for authorizing the release of B300 hardware involved in the case, and are seeking the maximum 5-year sentence against him and several other defendants. 8 defendants were charged in connection with offenses including breach of trust and document forgery, while a 9th person faces charges relating to the alleged diversion of money involving a distributor. Prosecutors have also accused some participants of creating false material and websites as part of attempts to overcome export control checks. The allegations remain allegations, and the defendants have not been convicted merely because indictments have been filed. That distinction matters particularly in a case involving employees or former employees of major publicly traded companies, because individual criminal allegations do not establish that Nvidia or Supermicro, as companies, authorized the alleged conduct. Nvidia said it would cooperate with Taiwanese authorities as they investigated the allegations. Supermicro has also said it cooperated with the authorities and would continue strengthening its export compliance program, while stressing that the case concerned individuals rather than an allegation that the company itself deliberately organized the shipments. 74 servers made it through. The most damaging number in the case may be 74. Those are the servers that prosecutors say successfully reached Chinese customers. The remaining 56 were destined for export through Japan before Taiwanese customs detected irregularities and stopped them, according to the prosecution account. The distinction between the two groups exposes the uncomfortable part of the story. Authorities appear to have prevented a significant additional shipment, but only after dozens of machines had allegedly already completed their journeys. Earlier in the investigation, the Keelung District Prosecutor's Office said suspects were accused of knowingly attempting to sell restricted high-end AI servers into China, Hong Kong, and Macau using false export documentation. Its May 21 statement said searches had been carried out at 12 locations and evidence seized as investigators expanded the case. The investigation therefore developed over months, rather than appearing suddenly with this week's indictments. What began as a suspected diversion of sensitive computing equipment ultimately expanded into allegations involving insiders positioned at several points along the technology supply chain. Why B300 hardware matters. AI servers are no longer ordinary corporate computing equipment. The newest systems combine enormous quantities of processing power and memory to train and run increasingly capable artificial intelligence models. Nvidia has become the dominant supplier of the specialized processors at the heart of that boom, while Taiwan remains essential to the manufacturing and assembly ecosystem supporting it, that has transformed a server shipment into a geopolitical asset. Washington's restrictions are intended to make it significantly harder for Chinese companies to accumulate the most advanced Western-designed computing hardware in large quantities. China, meanwhile, has powerful incentives to secure as much computing capacity as possible while developing its domestic semiconductor industry. Every successful diversion, therefore, weakens the practical effect of restrictions, even when the formal rules remain intact. This is why the Taiwan case carries consequences far beyond the 9 defendants. The crucial question is not merely whether one alleged network found a way through the system, but whether similar routes exist elsewhere, across the enormous international market for AI hardware. The human weak point in a high-tech system. The allegations also expose a surprisingly old-fashioned vulnerability inside the world's most advanced technological industry. Export controls can involve licenses, databases, customer screening, end-user declarations, and sophisticated compliance software. Yet those systems still depend on people deciding whether paperwork is genuine, whether a customer is credible, and whether an unusually large order makes commercial sense. Prosecutors say the defendants knew that Nvidia and Supermicro operated strict internal controls, but nevertheless collaborated for what prosecutors described as enormous profits. The prosecution argues that their alleged actions increased compliance costs and damaged Taiwan's international reputation. That accusation turns the story into something larger than simple smuggling. If insiders can manipulate approvals or provide the credibility needed to overcome internal checks, then companies may have to redesign compliance systems on the assumption that their own processes can be attacked from within. More inspections, independent verification of customer facilities, tighter distributor monitoring, and additional tracing of machines after delivery could follow. The harder those controls become, however, the greater the cost of selling powerful AI infrastructure to legitimate customers. Taiwan is caught in the middle. Taiwan occupies an unusually sensitive position in the technology confrontation between China and the United States. It is central to the production of the world's most advanced semiconductors, while simultaneously facing intense political and military pressure from Beijing. That makes Taiwan not merely a manufacturer, but one of the most strategically important checkpoints in the global flow of AI computing power. Prosecutors themselves have emphasized the reputational consequences of the alleged scheme, arguing that illegal diversion of high-end servers damages Taiwan's international image. There is also a legal complication. Reporting on the case indicates that violating the relevant American export restrictions is not by itself a standalone criminal offense under Taiwanese law. Forcing prosecutors to rely on offenses such as document forgery, breach of trust, and embezzlement where the evidence supports them. That gap could now attract political attention. If Taiwan wants to demonstrate that it can act as a reliable guardian of sensitive technology, lawmakers may face pressure to make deliberate circumvention of allied technology restrictions easier to prosecute directly, rather than relying on adjacent offenses. The bigger AI Cold War. The commercial value of the hardware is only one part of the story. Advanced computing capacity is increasingly treated as a strategic resource alongside energy, telecommunications infrastructure, and weapons technology. Whoever can obtain the largest concentration of cutting-edge processors gains an advantage in building and deploying sophisticated AI models. That is why controlling Nvidia chips has become a pillar of American technology policy towards China. But hardware controls face a fundamental problem. Chips and servers are physical objects that can be resold, rerouted, and hidden inside complex global supply chains. Tight restrictions also increase the economic reward available to anyone capable of delivering prohibited hardware to buyers willing to pay a premium. The alleged Taiwan scheme is an almost textbook illustration of that pressure. If prosecutors prove their case, the controls were not defeated by a breakthrough in semiconductor engineering. They were allegedly defeated through false paperwork, commercial intermediaries, multiple jurisdictions, and people trusted to operate parts of the legitimate supply chain. What happens next? The 9 defendants will now face Taiwan's judicial process, where prosecutors will have to prove the individual allegations against them. Prosecutors are seeking particularly severe sentences for several defendants, while recommending more lenient treatment for two who are said to have admitted wrongdoing and cooperated with investigators. For Nvidia, Supermicro, and other companies selling high-end AI infrastructure, the consequences could arrive sooner than any final verdict. Compliance procedures are likely to face renewed scrutiny over whether customer declarations, site inspections, and distributor relationships provide enough protection against deliberate diversion. The greater strategic problem cannot be solved by this prosecution alone. 74 servers allegedly reached China before another 56 were stopped, demonstrating both that enforcement can work and that a determined supply chain can sometimes move faster than it. The AI rivalry is increasingly being fought not only inside laboratories and semiconductor fabs, but through warehouses, invoices, customs declarations, and distribution networks stretching across several countries. If advanced processors have become strategic assets, the battle over who ultimately receives them may be only beginning.